You come home to droopy tomato leaves. You water them. 2 days later, they look worse. And the tomatoes are rotting at the bottom, so you water more. That is not the heat killing your garden. That is the panic response. Most heat wave advice online teaches you to react before you diagnose. Water more. Pile on mulch. Throw shade over everything and hope the plant forgives you. Cherokee Purple can start dropping flowers when July nights stay hot. Bed sheets trap heat and grow mildew. Calcium spray will not fix those leathery black patches on the bottom of tomatoes. I spent a weekend reading university extension research from Cornell to UF. 7 moves came out of it. One is a white powder fruit growers have used for decades. Vegetable gardeners barely touch it, and it can drop leaf temperature by about 10 degrees. Start with the first mistake. Because it looks helpful, and it is how a lot of gardens get finished off. Number 1. Deep water twice a week. The tuna can trick that ends daily watering forever. You walk out at 6 p.m., feel the top of the soil is bone dry, and reach for the hose. Same thing tomorrow, and the day after. 3 weeks in, your tomatoes are struggling anyway. Nothing looks worse than a garden watered every single day and still failing. Here is what most videos skip. Shallow watering does not just fail to reach the roots, it actively teaches the roots to stay shallow. Roots grow toward water. Every time you sprinkle the top 2 inches and stop, you are telling them where to camp. They obey. They stay in the top 3 inches of soil. And that top 3 inches is exactly the zone that bakes when a 95-degree afternoon hits. Deep watering does the opposite. It pulls the roots down 6 to 8 inches into soil that stays cooler and holds moisture for days. Same plant, different root system, different outcome in July. Extension programs have been saying this for decades. 1 inch of water per week is baseline. In a real heat wave, push that to 1.5 inches. Not spread across 7 days, delivered in 2 deep soaks. So here's exactly what to do. Grab an empty tuna can from your recycling bin. Put it in the bed while you water. When the can holds 1 inch, you are done for that session. 2 sessions a week for in-ground beds. Daily check for containers, because a 5-gallon pot can dry twice as fast as the ground around it. Time it before 8 a.m. Any later, and the hose itself becomes the problem. A garden hose sitting in July sun can pour out water hot enough to scald young roots. Run it out onto the driveway for 30 seconds first. Cold water only into the beds. That is the whole trick. 1 free tool, 1 inch of water, twice a week. 2 deep soaks a week beat 7 shallow ones, every time. Before we go further, drop your state or your USDA zone in the comments. A gardener in Phoenix and a gardener in Vermont need completely different advice on this stuff, and I read every one to figure out what to cover next. Number 2. Fertilizer. Above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, why helping your peppers in a heat wave actually burns them. Your peppers slow down in a heat wave, so you reach for the fertilizer. You think you are helping. You are not. The reason is what fertilizer actually does inside a stressed plant. Fertilizer is a signal. It tells the plant, grow now. A pepper at 78 degrees hears that signal and puts out new leaves and flowers. A pepper at 96 degrees is not in growth mode at all. It is already switched into survival mode. Its whole job that week is to keep water in its cells and cool its leaves. Nothing else. Then you give it fertilizer. That signal now says grow, when there is no water to move up and no cool time to grow in. The plant tries anyway. It pushes new tissue. Every drop of moisture it had is now being spent on shoots that will wilt by afternoon. In plain English, you did not feed your plant. You gave it an assignment it could not deliver. Container plants make it worse. Fertilizer salts stay in the pot when heat pulls the water out fast. The salts concentrate around the roots. Now you have a burned root system on top of a stressed plant. So here is your move. If the forecast says above 90 degrees for 3 days or more, put the bottle down. No 10-10-10, no blood meal, no bloom booster. When temps drop back into the 80s for a stretch, you can pick it back up. One exception. A container plant already loaded with fruit can take 1 light dose of fish emulsion, about 1 tablespoon per gallon of water, just once through the wave. That is it. Compost top dress is always fine. It feeds the soil, not the growth signal. A stressed plant does not need food. It needs rest. Number 3. Kaolin clay. The orchard powder that drops leaf temperature by 10 degrees. I almost skipped this one because it sounded gimmicky. A white powder that cools plants? Sounded like garden Instagram to me. Then I found the Cornell Cooperative Extension publication, then the Florida citrus trials, and now I would not leave it off a heatwave list. The stuff is called Kaolin clay. Farmers spray it in apple orchards up and down the Pacific Northwest, pear growers in Oregon, citrus growers in Florida. Almost no home vegetable gardener knows it exists. The part every guide skips is that it is doing 3 jobs at the same time. Job 1. It blocks a chunk of the sun before that sun ever hits your leaf. Job 2. It irritates soft-bodied insects like aphids, thrips, and cucumber beetles, so they leave and lay eggs somewhere else. Job 3. It prevents sun scald on fruit. Peppers, tomatoes, squash all get that pale, sunken, cooked-looking patch on the sunny side. Kaolin helps prevent that. Here is what actually happens on the leaf. The clay dries into a fine white film that looks like your plant was dusted with frost. Sunlight hits that film. Most of it bounces back into the sky before it reaches the leaf tissue underneath. Less light absorbed means less heat generated. In a published trial on coffee, kaolin-coated leaves ran around 10 degrees cooler than untreated leaves at midday. UF/IFAS reports the same range on citrus. That one detail changes how you think about sun stress. You do not have to block the sun. You just have to reflect it before it lands. 2 honest notes before you buy. First, kaolin leaves a visible white film on your plants for a few weeks. Some gardeners love it because it means the plant is protected. Some hate it. It rinses off produce with a quick spray, but the plants themselves stay chalky-looking until the film wears off. If your HOA is picky, know that going in. Second, the label specifically notes that growth enhancer uses are not registered in California, and pesticide rules vary by state. Check your state rules before you order. For everyone else, here is how you use it. The product is Surround WP. Order the 25-pound bag from Johnny's Seeds, Grower Solution, or Amazon. Mix 1/4 to 1/2 pound of powder into 1 gallon of water in a handheld pump sprayer. Coat the leaves top and bottom, plus the fruit and stems. Reapply after heavy rain or every 2 to 3 weeks. Growers have coated their crops with this stuff for a generation. Home gardeners never got the memo. Your peppers and tomatoes benefit the exact same way apples do. 1 bag, 1 garden, 1 season. That alone is worth the price. If a single tip in this video saved you from losing your tomato harvest, hit subscribe. Every week, same kind of research, same level of specifics. Free, 1 tap, and I keep the ads off. Kaolin clay handles the sun problem, but the next one handles the other problem most gardeners get wrong, when it is 100 degrees outside. Number 4. The 8 p.m. recovery test. How to tell if wilted plants actually need water. You see the wilt from the driveway, leaves hanging like laundry that never dried. You know that feeling. Dread, then grab the hose. Half the time, that reflex gives you the wrong answer. Here is what happens. Tomato leaves curl and droop when they are losing water faster than the roots can pull it up. That is not the plant asking for a drink. That is the plant closing its own pores to conserve water until the sun backs off. It is a survival move, not a distress signal. You panic and water anyway. Soggy soil suffocates the roots. Now you have both problems. The fix takes 5 minutes and no product. Wait until 8 p.m. Sun has been down for a while, air has cooled off. Walk out and look at the same plant. 9 times out of 10, the leaves are already back up on their own. Plant was coping the whole time. If they are still limp at 8 p.m., then there is a real issue. Test the soil first. Push your finger 2 inches down into the bed. If it comes back damp, do not water. Something else is wrong. If it comes back dry, water deep. Photo comparison helps too. Snap the same corner of the garden every 3 days during a heat wave. Growth might slow. That is fine. Growth stopped cold for 5 days straight is when you start asking questions. One caveat. This 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. test is for heat wilt. If your plant is limp at 8 a.m. with morning dew on the leaves, that is not heat stress. That is soil moisture, root damage, or something ugly. Different fix. That comes up in the last one on this list. The plant knows what it is doing. Trust it before you drown it. Number 5. The 6-inch shade cloth gap. The rule that separates cooling from disease. Every summer video tells you to throw shade cloth over your beds. What they do not tell you is that if you do it wrong, you can trap heat and grow more disease than you had before. The first time I saw shade cloth resting directly on tomato leaves in July, the underside of that fabric was dripping with condensation. Powdery mildew was already starting on the leaves. That gardener replaced 4 plants that summer. Nobody had told her about the 6-inch gap. Here is where the story usually stops in other videos. Shade cloth must sit at least 6 inches above the canopy. Draped on leaves, it traps humidity, blocks airflow, and rubs the plants raw. Now you have heat, humidity, and mechanical damage stacked together. Track this from the roots up. Roots pull water. Water travels up the stem. Water exits the leaf pores through evaporation. And that evaporation is what cools your plant. When temperature climbs above 95, the pipeline maxes out. Water leaves faster than the roots can pull. Cells start taking damage. Shade cloth intercepts sunlight before it lands, cutting the heat that drives the whole system. Less heat means less water demand. Flowers stay put. Fruit sets. A University of Delaware pepper trial measured a max canopy temperature drop of 8 degrees under 30% shade cloth. The plants under shade produced 3 times the marketable fruit. One straight answer before you buy. If you live in the deep south or Gulf Coast where humidity stays above 70% for weeks and you cannot lift the cloth off your plants, skip shade cloth entirely. Use afternoon shade from a west-facing wall or a temporary umbrella instead. Draped fabric in that climate will grow more mildew than the heat kills. For the rest of you, this is where you shift. Free tier. Pop-up canopy or patio umbrella dragged over the bed during the worst hours. Old bed sheets do not work. They trap heat, block air, decay in UV, and act like a parachute in wind. Cheap tier. Half-inch PVC electrical conduit from Home Depot, bent into hoops over a raised bed. Drape 30% black shade cloth on top. Full install takes 15 minutes. Investment tier. 4x4 posts, stainless wire rope, 40% shade cloth with grommets stretched overhead. You can walk under it. Lasts many seasons. Percent to buy. 30% for zone 5 through 7 during 3 to 5 day waves. 30 to 40% for zone 8 and 9 through July and August. 40 to 50% for zone 10 and 11 for the full summer. Height. Minimum 6 inches above the canopy, always. After stacking the 3 side by side, the PVC hoop wins for most gardens. Cheap, fast, and it comes down in 5 minutes when September arrives. Getting the shade right helps every tomato in the bed. But there is one thing shade cloth cannot fix, and that is when the tomato itself is wrong for your zone. That is the next one. Number 6. Heat-tolerant cultivars. Why Cherokee Purple drops flowers in Georgia every July. You planted Cherokee Purple in Georgia because a video told you it was the best. In July, every flower dropped. That is not a fluke. That is the wrong tomato for your zone. This is what the label will not tell you. 4 out of 5 gardening videos naming their favorite tomato skip the zone conversation entirely. Cherokee Purple, Brandywine, San Marzano all deserve their reputation in Zone 5 through 7. In Zone 8 and warmer, they can drop flowers in the same July heat every year. Watch what your plant does at 92 degrees. The flower opens. Pollen forms inside the flower, but at that temperature, the pollen grain wall turns sticky. It does not release when the flower vibrates. It does not reach the part of the flower that starts the fruit. The flower gives up, drops off the stem, and the plant moves on. Heat-tolerant cultivars carry a version of the gene that keeps setting fruit in heat that makes regular slicers drop flowers. Not a bigger plant, not a stronger plant. A plant with different genetics. That is a genetics problem. Watering in shade cannot fix it. The cultivar can. If you are in Zone 8 or warmer, and you have been buying whatever tomato transplant the box store puts out front in April, this is where you fix it. Skip the generic ones. Ask for Heatmaster or Solar Fire, both Bonnie Plants hybrids. When spring transplants come out at Home Depot. Heatmaster in particular is bred to set fruit above 90 degrees. It came out on top in a Maryland extension trial during southern heat. For an heirloom, Arkansas Traveler was bred at the University of Arkansas and released around 1970. Handles heat, humidity, and drought. Pink, 6 to 8 ounce fruit. Southern Exposure Seed Exchange and Burpee both stock the seed. Check the current packet price before you buy. For a fall replant in Zone 8 through 10, sow Phoenix or Florida 91 indoors mid-June and transplant late July. Fruit ripens through October. For peppers, Carolina Wonder and Big Bertha handle the same heat range. UF/IFAS lists both for southern gardens. For squash, Tromboncino is the one that beats vine borers and heat at the same time. It is technically a moscata species, so vine borers have a much harder time wrecking it. For summer greens, Malabar spinach vines up a trellis and thrives above 80 degrees when regular spinach and lettuce give up. Container tomatoes go in a 5-gallon grow bag for Heatmaster, 15 to 20 gallons for Arkansas Traveler. Spacing: 24 to 36 inches between tomatoes, 18 to 24 for peppers. Fair warning here. If you garden in Zone 5 through 7, ignore this entry. Cherokee Purple and Brandywine still win in your climate. This is for gardeners south of Kentucky, in Southern California, or in the desert Southwest. I would take Heatmaster over Cherokee Purple in Georgia every single time. Flavor comes in a distant second when the alternative is zero fruit. Right cultivar, right water, right shade. All of that gets you 90% of the way through a heat wave. But there is one mistake that quietly kills more plants than heat itself, and even the best gear cannot save you from it. That is the last one on this list. Number 7. The 5-second diagnostic tree. The 4 problems that look like heat but are not. You see wilted, sad-looking plants. You water. You water again. A week later, the plants look worse and start dropping fruit with dark, leathery spots on the bottom. You think it is heat damage. It is not. It is you. Water is the first reflex when a plant looks stressed. That reflex kills more plants during a heat wave than the heat does. The detail nobody teaches is that 4 different problems all look identical from 10 feet away. Only one of them wants water. Here is the 5-second diagnostic tree. Learn it once, and you will save your garden every summer. Question 1. Is the wilt only in the afternoon and the leaves back up by 8 p.m.? Heat stress. Plant is coping. Do nothing. Question 2. Top 3 inches bone dry. Plant wilted all day. Real drought. Deep soak. Question 3. Are the leaves wilted but the soil damp when you push your finger 2 inches down? And when you water, does it pool on top and run out the drainage holes? That is hydrophobic soil. Do not dump more water. You will drown roots that are already suffocating. Question 4. Dark leathery patches on the bottom of your tomatoes, peppers, or squash. Blossom end rot. Watering is the fix, not calcium spray. Question 5. Twisted, cupped, or distorted new growth while older leaves look normal. Herbicide drift from a neighbor. Water does nothing. Bagging does nothing either. Let me walk you through the 2 most misdiagnosed. Calcium travels through the plant on the water stream. Once it lands in a cell, it cannot move sideways. The developing tomato fruit has to grab its calcium fresh from every day's water. Water Monday, skip Tuesday and Wednesday, flood Thursday. And the calcium delivery keeps getting interrupted. The blossom end is growing fastest. It starves first. The cells collapse. That is the sunken dark patch on the bottom. The calcium was in the soil the whole time. The problem was the delivery truck. For hydrophobic soil, dry potting mix repels water like wax repels rain. Dump a full watering can on it, and the water races down the sides between soil and pot, straight out the drainage holes. The middle stays bone dry while the plant looks watered. Roots keep dying while you keep pouring. 2 mechanisms. Same looking plant, very different fixes. BER fix. Long term, deep soak twice a week. 1 to 1.5 inches per week total, plus 2 to 3 inches of straw mulch on the soil. Skip the calcium spray. Clemson, HGIC, confirms it does not work. Hydrophobic fix. Sprinkle water in small doses until the soil accepts it again. Or bottom soak. Set the pot in a shallow tray of water for an hour. Add mulch. Never let a container go completely dry. Herbicide fix. Honestly, the fruit already touched is lost. Save seeds from clean plants. Plant an arborvitae or bamboo screen along the neighbor-facing edge before next season. That is a long play, not a heat wave fix. Before you use this tree, know the limit. This diagnostic tree assumes you have been paying attention to your plants all summer. If you left for a 2-week vacation and came home to a disaster, the tree still works, but the recovery is longer. Some plants will not come back. That is the honest reality. Water is not the answer to every problem. Sometimes stopping is. Deep water twice a week with a tuna can. Skip fertilizer above 90 degrees. Spray kaolin clay before the heat hits. Check plants at 8 p.m., not 3 p.m. Get 30% shade cloth up 6 inches off your beds. In Zone 8 or warmer, switch to Heatmaster or Arkansas Traveler. And when in doubt, check the soil before you reach for the hose. Heatwave gardening is not about doing more. It is about doing less of the wrong things. Every one of these moves protects your time and your money by preventing the panic response that kills the most plants. That is the whole point. Be honest in the comments. Which of these mistakes have you been making this summer? I read all of them. Now think about one person in your life. The friend whose tomato plants always seem to be in some kind of crisis. The parent who spent a small fortune on spring transplants and lost every one by August. The neighbor who keeps buying calcium spray. Send them this video. Do not even write a message. Just send the link. Take care of your garden, and I will see you in the next one.